What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a little bit of trial and error on my Cummins truck build over here. Now let me explain. So as I'm sure many of you already know, when you start lifting your truck up this high, you start to have some geometry issues, which I've already fixed. My lift kit came with the drop brackets to get my track bar and my sway bar and everything else kind of where it needs to be. And I put on the steering stabilizer and I got the upgraded Fox shocks 2.0s. So I have been doing everything I possibly can to make this truck ride as good as possible. However, I still have a little body rock from side to side when I'm driving on these uneven roads. Now I do understand with large 40 by 15.5 inch wide tires that sometimes those large tires will feel out the imperfections of the road and kind of pull you side to side. I get that, but on my truck, when I go on some of these backcountry roads, once my truck starts to rock a little bit, it definitely shakes me side to side a little bit until the road smooths out. So I have been doing some research and I found a few ideas that I'd like to try, but they range from inexpensive to very expensive. So obviously I'd like to try to start with the least expensive option to see if it helps. So what we're going to be doing today is upgrading my factory front sway bar to a heavy duty Hellwig sway bar. Now, the reason I'm starting with the front bar only is honestly, when I ordered it, the rear sway bar was not even available and wouldn't be for at least 2 to 3 months. So I figured I'm not going to worry about the rear sway bar right now, because with this Cummins truck that's already front heavy and the fact that it's lifted 11 inches, I figured the front sway bar was more important at this point anyways. So that's what we're going to do. So I got the sway bar in, it just showed up today. So let's take a closer look underneath and I'll show you what we're working with. Okay, so here's my sway bar right here. So I do have the drop bracket that came with my lift kit that brings it down to the level it needs to be. Now these are supposed to be parallel to the ground, which mine is. Let me see if I can kind of step back and show you. So as you can see here, it's pretty much parallel to the ground. Now just to kind of explain how these work. So here's your sway bar. You're going to have them mounted here, or they could be mounted slightly different on your vehicle, but mine are mounted here, and then they're attached to your axle, typically with your end links. So what happens is they counteract each other. So if the left side goes down, the right side goes up. If the right side goes down, the left side goes up. And they do that to stabilize your vehicle to keep them flat on the ground. Now, being that my truck, when I'm driving on uneven roads, once this truck starts to rock a little bit side to side, it definitely gets a rocking. Now, I will say this, it's really not that bad. But when you are driving, just rocking side to side and bouncing around a little bit more is just not as good as something that might have more of a factory ride that's not doing that. Now, I understand these trucks, when you're lifted like this, are not going to ride like a Cadillac. I get that. But that's what's fun about this, to be able to lift it and make it look the way I want it to look, but still try to maintain a comfortable factory ride. So that's the goal. Now, I have done some research online. I have reached out to Carly. I have reached out to Thurin. I tried a couple different companies and communicated with them back and forth on their sway bars. Now, what they were telling me, Carly and Thurin, was that because of the weight of this truck and how high it is lifted, they did not think that their adjustable sway bars were going to work for my application, because some of those sway bars are a little looser and they're meant to allow your truck to flex a little bit when you're off-roading. I don't need that. What I need is a stiffer sway bar that's going to really help stiffen up this truck and limit how much it's swaying left to right. So after doing some research online, I found a sway bar that I think might work, which is from a company called Hellwig. Now, I'll post a link in the description of the bar I got, but without further ado, let's go take a look at it. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and then we're going to take a closer look at it. Be back in just a second. Okay, so we got it all opened up. Let's take a closer look. Now, I could tell right away, this thing is very heavy. It's very thick, very heavy duty, much bigger and better than the factory one that's on there now. I mean, you could just see how big this thing is. Okay. Now, it does come with a tube of lubricant, which you can put over top of your bushings here, slide them over the bar. They are already open, so you don't necessarily have to slide them on. You could just kind of clamp them on. and then you're going to locate them in the same position as the factory bar was, so we'll have to make note of that. Then you have new brackets that go over top of this that clamps them on. Then you have an outside ring here that clamps on the bar that stops the bar from shifting side to side. So it looks like it should be a pretty easy install. So let me climb under the truck and start unbolting the factory sway bar, and then we'll get this one put on here as quickly as we can. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and back out of my driveway and just drive the truck up the road a little bit, just so you could see possibly just how I bounce around, and maybe even the chain for my train horn here. Just get an idea on how it bounces around on just a semi rough road. I mean, this road here is not, you see right here, like you bounce around a little bit like that. I mean, you can even look at the chain. I don't mind bumps. I'm talking about actually bouncing around. So I mean, like this. You see how it just kind of throws you around side to side as soon as you hit a bump? Now, again, I don't expect to fix this 100% because I understand this is a lifted truck. It's got big giant tires. I understand it's not going to be perfect and ride like a factory vehicle. But my interest in customizing my truck makes me want to try to make it ride as nice as possible. Now again, I don't have an engineering degree that figures out how to do all this. I am just a guy that loves customizing vehicles, that's trying to learn through trial and error what works and what doesn't work. So again, if I could just go ahead and minimize the side to side bouncing back and forth, that's good, because again, when my wife and kids are in the car, they don't want to be bouncing around because it sometimes makes them a little car sick. But if I can minimize that and just make the overall ride a little better, that's my goal. So we're almost back to the house, so we're going to go ahead and take this factory sway bar off, and then we're going to go ahead and compare them, and then we're going to put the new one on, and then we're going to go take it for a drive down the road to see if it feels any better. Okay, so we're back. So we're probably just going to go ahead and use a 14 mil socket to take these 4 bolts off at the front. And then I have a 18 mil socket that I'm going to use to take these nuts off the back. Now there is a nut on the back of these front ones, so you could just go ahead and use a 14 mil wrench on the top to hold that nut in place while you pull these bolts out. So let me go ahead and start taking all that off, and we'll be right back in a minute. Okay, so I went ahead and I took these top brackets off, which are pretty simple and easy. The bottom ones at the end links are a little tough. You have to pretty much get a set of vice grips behind or actually below your sway bar. That way it'll hold that from spinning, and then you can actually take your nut right off. But if you don't hold this fitting behind there, it'll just keep spinning and you won't get your nut off. So let me go ahead and do the other side, and we'll be right back in a minute. All right. Okay, so we are back. Let's take a closer look. So as you can see here, see if I can pull it closer. There's definitely a much beefier, thicker girth to this Hellwig bar here compared to the factory ones. So I don't know if that helps any of you, but you can see it's a much beefier version, and it's a little longer. If we just kind of line them up, which I'd say the edge of this is sort of in line there, you could see it's a little beefier, but they should line up the same. But again, this is a heavy duty, much thicker sway bar. So again, this should help stabilize the vehicle a little bit more than what the factory one was doing. So let me go ahead and put my bushings on. All I'm gonna do is put a little bit of the lubricant in the rubber bushing, slide it over, sort of lining them up a little bit, put my clamp over top, and then I'll put my end rings on the outside. These rings right here go on the outside over here, okay? And that'll stop everything from sliding around. But you don't want to tighten anything down just yet. You just want to put your mounts on, and then once we mount it back to the truck, then we'll tighten everything down once everything's straight. So let me go ahead and put these bushings on, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. So I went ahead and I started with the front end bolts and put those on loosely. Then I flipped it back up into place, put my clamp on, and loosely put the bolts in. So as you can see here, my end nuts are still loose on both sides. So again, I put all the hardware in back the way it originally was, with the bolt from the bottom, a big washer, a lock nut washer, and then the nut on top. So again, everything is loose right now. I can kind of slide this back and forth. Everything's put in. So now what I want to do is just pretty much try to take a few measurements and line this up as evenly as I possibly can. And then once I feel it's pretty even on both sides and straight, then we're going to go ahead and tighten down all of our bolts on both sides. Once we do that, then we'll go ahead and slide our end clamps over and lock those in place using an Allen wrench. So let me go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we are back. So as you can see right here, that is the old factory sway bar. And now there is the new heavy duty Hellwig sway bar. I got everything mounted back on. I got new washers put on. I used all the factory hardware that was still good. Got everything nice and tight. Got everything lined up. And the easiest way I found to line it up was obviously just kind of looking to make sure my end links here were straight up and down. And then what I did was I measured from the outside of my drop bracket to the outside of the bar. I got equal distances on both sides. Everything looks pretty good. So everything's nice and tight. I assume because I have that lube in there, there might be a little bit of sliding around, but I'll go back in and tighten everything back up after I drive it for a couple days just to make sure. So now let's go take this thing down the road and see if there is any improvement that is actually noticeable. Okay, so here we go. Let's try the same road and see if it does any better job at keeping the truck a little bit more stable. Just a little bit of rock. I do notice a little bit. It's definitely just a little bit tighter. Again, it's not 100% because I assume there's a couple other things I might consider doing. But again, I wanted to try an upgraded sway bar first to see if it tightens things up a little bit, which it has. I actually feel it. It's a little bit tighter. Not 100%, but I can feel I'm not bouncing around and being jarred around so much. A little bit, yes, but not like it used to be. Now, I only have the front sway bar on. I'll probably eventually upgrade the rear sway bar to a Hellwig as well. And then, depending on how that goes, I might start looking into other options, like possibly adding a second set of shocks all the way around, or possibly upgrading and going with coilover shocks. So we're going to take this step by step. But for now, I do notice a little bit of an improvement. Again, this sway bar for the front of my 2016 Dodge Ram 2500 Cummins, it was only a little over $300. So that compared to how much it would cost me to do coilovers, which could be a couple thousand, or even just dual shocks all the way around, which could be another $1,000. I don't know yet. So what I'm saying is to start with something that's lower cost, do a little trial and error and see what works and what doesn't work. Being that this upgraded front sway bar has tightened my front end up just a little bit, that's a good sign. Then I'm going to try a rear sway bar and see how that tightens things up a little bit. And then if I still need improvement, then we're going to start looking at shocks or possibly coilovers. But I always recommend when you have a problem, try to figure out what that problem is, then try to figure out at least 3 to 4 possible upgrades that might actually rectify that problem. And then start with the lowest cost one first, because that might be the fix and you just saved yourself a ton of money. Okay, everybody, we are done. We got the new Hellwig heavy duty front sway bar installed, and I just took it for a test run. And so far, it does seem to be a little tighter. I don't seem to have as much body rock. Now there's still a little bit, and I expect a little bit, because again, when you have a large lifted truck on very large tires, a lot of times these tires will seek the imperfections in the road and jar you around a little bit, and I expect that. But this new sway bar has tightened things up, and I do notice less body rock, so I'm happy with that. So the next thing I want to do is actually upgrade the rear sway bar when it comes back in stock, and I'll be doing that very soon as well. And I'm hoping that that will also increase my performance a little bit in terms of the suspension rock as well. So overall, my first initial impressions of the Hellwig heavy duty front sway bar for the Ram 2500, I give it a go. I actually feel the difference, and I like it, and I'm happy with my purchase. So that's it for today's video. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, like this video. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, because it definitely helps me out. It lets me know that you like the content that I'm working on, and it just encourages me to keep working on more videos for all of you. So that's it. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. I truly appreciate you all. Thank you for all of your support. And as always, see you in the next video.